Hey everybody, Mark here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying the Biblical Finances series. And in this one, we are going to cover 5 sure ways that we know we're going to follow our way and not God's way. That's why it's titled Bad News Before Good News, because we're going to eventually get to know how we're following God's way. But for today, it's how do you know you're not following God's way? And for this, we're going to go to the book of wisdom, the book of Proverbs. So open up to the book of Proverbs. We're going to start in Proverbs 22, verse 7. 5 ways that you know you are not following God's way when it comes to finances. Proverbs 22:7 says, The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. First way, indebtedness. God does not like debt. God says here that when you are in debt, the rich will rule over you. And the borrower is always going to be a servant to the lender. You always have to make sure that you're looking over your shoulder when you're in debt for that credit card company or that car company or that mortgage, whatever it may be. The more debt you pile on, the more you are serving them when you go to work. You get much less in your income, and of course, a lot more is going out. So, indebtedness, we should try to limit that as much as possible. Number 2, look over at Proverbs 11:24, and here we're going to see stinginess. Stinginess. It says, There is that scattereth and yet increaseth, and there is that withholdeth more than is meet, but it tendeth to poverty. What this verse means is, when God gives you finances, you spread it out, and God just continues to replenish. When you continue to receive money in and never give it out, it ends up like the Dead Sea, and it just starts to stink. And it fills up with all the minerals and stuff that will choke out any life in it. That's what this verse is talking about, is when you're stingy and you don't give, of whether it be to people in need or organizations or your local church. Stinginess causes fear in us because we don't want to lose what we have, without the mindset of remembering this is all God's anyway, and He's going to provide it. Number 3, I want you to look at Proverbs 28, verse 22. 28, verse 22, and here we see hastiness. Hastiness. It says, He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. What does this mean? Get rich quick schemes. You know what? God intended for man to work and bring in an income, take care of his family, take care of the church, take care of the people, and make sure that you are stewarding that money well. If you try to subvert that plan and do a get rich quick scheme, this is a surefire way that God says here, He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye. Even though you might not think it's an evil eye, that quick money that's going to come in will disappear just as fast. Just as fast. Look over at Proverbs 6:11. Here we see a good one. Kind of tied to hastiness. This is laziness. Laziness. Sometimes hastiness means you just want it fast and as easy as possible. Lazy sometimes just means I just don't want to work at all. Look at Proverbs 6:11. It says, 6:9 through 11. It says, How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. In the New Testament it says, if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. Why? Because food is the fuel that we need to get up, go out, do things, work, bring home income, bring home the finances. That's why God is providing for us, to make sure we're providing for our families. And if you don't work, you really shouldn't be eating, because there's no need for you to have energy. You're not using it well. And lastly, Proverbs 23:21, and this one is particularly tied, I think, mostly to America. drunkenness and gluttonous. You know what? We can have anything we want at the drop of a hat. All we have to do is log on to Amazon, hit a button, it's here maybe within the same day. And it's just gluttony. Gluttony isn't always just food. Gluttony can be just a collection of things. You want as much as you could possibly accumulate. For what? So it can end up at the Goodwill pile once our days are expired. Look at Proverbs 23:21. It says, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Pleasing only self will never satisfy. That's the bad news. In next week's video, we're going to get to the great news on God's plan in our finances. And I sure hope you show up next week. I don't want you to leave you with just bad news. But those are the 5 surefire ways that we know we're following our way and not God's. Adjust your ways now and let God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Till we talk again.